بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع هداه. We're starting on time, almost. That's good. Last week we spoke about the basmala and the isti'adha. Anybody have questions about what we spoke about last week? Any questions? All right. Before we start with the new topic, as I mentioned last week, we'll be upgrading a few people to active participants. Since we don't have Brother Hussam anymore, Brother Ahmed, we are upgrading. Brother Yusuf, you declined, right? You declined upgrading to...
Yes, just for time being.
For the time being?
Yes.
All right, so the next person after you is Brother Fawad. So now you are active participant. Inshallah. Congratulations. And also Brother Nasser, except that Brother Nasser didn't come today, he has an exam tomorrow. And Brother, either
me and Mus'ab.
Either you or Mus'ab. So
Mus'ab.
Mus'ab, okay. So Mus'ab is number 3. So Brother Fawad, Brother Nasser, and Brother Mus'ab are now included in the top 15 active participants. The next person on the list, obviously, is Brother Abdul Basit. And after that, Brother Abdullah. So that you know. So the next time there is a spot available, you will be next on the list. And then Brother Adil after that, Brother Slim, Najib, Omar, and Luqman. So for the time being, you are silent participant, Brother Luqman. We welcome Brother Luqman today, our new addition. So today we're going to speak about Ahkam al-Waqf, the rules of stopping. When we recite the Quran, we have to stop. There's like what I call stop signs, right? Stop signs. This topic, you will find a lot of books and volumes written about the topic, and usually it is called Ahkam al-Waqf wal-Ibtida, the rules of stops and continuation or starting. Where to stop, how to stop, and what is a good stop, and what is what we call al-waqf al-qabih, or a stop that is what you call qabih.
Ugly.
Ugly. Yeah, that's the correct word. Not recommended. So there are places where a person shouldn't stop, and if you know that you're going to be running out of breath, then you make sure you stop before that particular place. Or if you do stop there, then you have to know where to pick up from. Where do I go back to have the correct sentence? Or sometimes, as I was reminded of this hadith yesterday, there was a delegation that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and one of them decided to speak. Right? He appointed himself to speak of this delegation. So he started to speak, and then he got to the point where he said, "Man yuti' Allah wa rasulahu." He said, "وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ رَشَدَ وَمَنْ يَعْصِيهِمَا." And he stopped here. Right? And we hear these sentences often, right? So we are familiar with the sentence. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sit down." He said, بئس المتكلم, or something similar. That means you made a huge mistake, so you just sit down, stop speaking. Because he stopped in a place where he shouldn't be stopping. So he said, "Man yuti' Allah wa rasulahu faqad rashad." whoever follows Allah and His Messenger, then he's guided. And then he connected it with the next word or part of the next sentence, which is وَمَنْ يَعْصِيهِمَا, and whoever disobeys them. And he stopped here. That means فَقَدْ رَشَدْ as well. That means he has been guided as well. Right? So he told him, sit down. So this is a good example of a bad stop. Usually at the back of the Mus'haf, at the end of the Mus'haf, if it's an actual book, Mus'haf, you have the meaning of the stop signs that they use in that particular print. And these stop signs may be different from one Mus'haf to another. So the reference that we use in this course is the famous Mus'haf al-Madina, which is the most popular one that is found everywhere in the world. We use it only as a reference, but ultimately you have to go back to your own Mus'haf to see if there is any differences in terms of what do they use, what kind of signs do they use for those particular stop signs. The topic of Ahkam al-Waqf, even though I'm putting it at the beginning of the course, and I'm trying to simplify it, and as we mentioned before, the lessons that we take at the beginning of the level usually are very simple. But actually this topic, if you read about it, it's a very complex and very complicated one. So what we're going to speak about is something very basic, to give you an idea. And then later on, if you are one of the advanced ones, you can go ahead and read about it and learn more about it on your own. So the major stop signs that we have in this Mus'haf, Mus'haf al-Madina, are the mim and the la. The lam or the la. So the mim, which is written like this, without the stick, and the lam is written something like this. These are the two major stop signs, and one of them, the mim, when you see it, you have to stop. You must stop. And if you memorize that ayah that has this sign, then you have to memorize where the stop is. Because if you see it, it's easy to remember and stop. But if you don't see it, or if you don't remember it, then you may make the mistake. Did they have these stop signs back in the days, the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in? No. They didn't have them. Why?
هذا العلم نشأ بعدين للتصوف. العلم هذا كله نشأ بعدين.
Yeah, but the question is why? Because they didn't have them.
No, they understand the Quran, so they can predict where to stop. Right?
Yes, exactly, because they understood the language.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And when I say they understood the language, I'm not talking about somebody who is Arab versus somebody who is non-Arab. I'm talking about the actual Arabic of the Quran. Like the story, the famous story, where this, I think he was a tabi, I can't remember the name, he was reciting, وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَقَطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا جَزَاءً بِمَا كَسَبَا نَكَالًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ رَحِيمٌ. This is what he read. So the Bedouin, there was a Bedouin listening to him. He said, repeat again. So he repeated. And he said, Wallahu Azizun Rahim. He said, cannot be. He said, it cannot be. He said, here it should be, Wallahu Azizun Hakim. Right? So this Bedouin, even though he didn't memorize the ayah, but he knew the word, let alone the stop. He knew the word. So whenever, and this is something I personally learned the hard way, I learned it from someone, and it is very beneficial. Whenever there's a punishment mentioned in the Quran, it has to be Allahu Azizun Hakim. Right? Don't think about it twice. Whenever there's a punishment, Allahu Azizun Hakim. Punishment, we're talking about hudud, right? For the sariq or the zani and so on. Wallahu Azizun Hakim. So not only they knew the stop sign, it was a language, and actually the Prophet ﷺ was sent, one of the reasons he was sent outside of Mecca, and this is, I found incredible. The language, the Arabic language was at its peak during his time, right? And in Mecca as well. But he was sent outside of Mecca so that the Arabic doesn't get affected by people coming to Mecca from outside. Right? People used to come for trade. So their Arabic may have been a little bit off. So they didn't want his language to be affected by outsiders. So that's why it is like pure Arabic. And the people who converted to Islam then, they right away they learned Arabic. We're talking about high level Arabic, right? They became able to say poetry and stuff, right? Not just being able to read the Quran. I mean, most of the Muslims around the world, whether they speak Arabic or not, are able to read the Quran. We're not talking about somebody just able to read, or somebody barely able to understand the words. So the stop signs that we find in the Quran is basically for us to help us know where to stop and where we shouldn't stop. So the meme and the lam are one of the major ones. So the meme, whenever we find a meme written like this, without the stick, that means that you have to stop. And on the other hand, on the contrary, the lam, you shouldn't stop. It's the opposite of the meme. It's the exact opposite of the meme. And if you don't remember anything else, this is the two stop signs that you have to remember. And as I said, if you memorize an ayah that has this, then you have to memorize the stop sign, where the stop sign is located. These two stop signs are not found in too many places in the Quran. There are very few places that have this meme and the lam. Very few places. So it's not like a big issue. It's not like there is so many that you won't be able to remember them. It's a very limited number of memes and lams. The next stop signs are the qili and the sali. And I'm writing them, I wrote the qili below the meme and the sali below the lam for a reason. And the reason being that the qili, whenever you find it, it means that that stopping is better. Stopping is preferred. Right? We said that the meme you must stop. So the qili, it's better to stop. And the sali is the opposite of the qili. That means it's better not to stop. But the lam was, you must. You shouldn't stop. Right? So the sali is similar, except that it's less powerful. Simple enough. The next sign is the genes. I'm going to write the gene here. And by the way, the qaf, probably the reason they used qaf is because it's one of the letters of the word qif, right? Qif, which means stop. And the sad is one of the letters of the word sil, which is connect. And the meme is probably because it's part of the word lazim, waqfun lazim. You must stop. And the lam is usually used for no, right? No, don't stop. The jim is the jawaz. The jawaz means it's whether you stop or continue is basically equivalent. Stopping and continuing. So they have equal weight. Stopping and continuing. Alright. And then you have the 3 dots. This set of 3 dots are usually separated by a word or a sentence. Right? They are not like next to each other. They are separated by a word, at least a word, if not a sentence. And this is called ta'anuq. And the way for us to apply it is to either stop on the first one or the second one. And it is similar in terms of strength to the qili and the sili. So if you stop at the first one, then it's better not to stop on the second one. But if you don't stop in the first one, then it's better to stop at the second one. Right? It's like we have a qili and sili instead of these two. It's like we have a qili here and sili here, or a sili here and a qili here. Right? And this is probably found 2 or 3 times in the Quran. The famous one is probably in the ayat that we're going to recite today. The homework was supposed to be Surah Al-Baqarah, 1 to 5. And it is probably found like 2 or 3 places altogether in the Quran. So it's not like a big deal. If a person doesn't stop at all on these 2 points, then it's not a big problem. Right? So the qili and the sili, the jim and the ta'anuq, the 3 dots, are not as important as the mim and the lam. Right?
Question?
Yes.
So stopping on both of them is okay?
Stopping on both of them, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I have never heard, or I don't remember that I have heard a reciter stopping on both of them. I don't remember. But I remember for sure that Sheikh Mahmoud al-Husari not stopping on either one. It's Surah Al-Baqarah. Sometimes if you need to verify how it is applied, you can go back to the reference. The references I give them to you in the form that I sent, the links at the bottom. Sheikh Mahmoud al-Husari or Manshawi. And you find that sometimes we have to compare 2 or 3 different recordings to see if they did the same thing or they did it differently. And you will find that they do sometimes stop at different spots in the Quran. Right? It's not like written in stones. The next stop sign is the sin. This is a small scene, and they use the letter sin because it refers to the word Saktah. And Saktah is a small pause that the reciter applies whenever the scene is present. This scene is found in this Quran, in this Mus'haf, in this particular riwayah, in how many places?
One.
One?
I know one.
You know one?
Yeah.
All right.
Three.
Maybe something like that.
Three or three. All right. It's 4 or 5. Yeah, it's 4 or 5. The fifth one is kind of debatable, but it's 4 or 5 places in the Quran. So it's not very common. The first one, I believe, is in Surah Al-Kahf, in ayah number 1, at the end of the ayah. And the other one is Surah Al-Qiyamah and Mutaffifin and Salasila, Surah Al-Jinn. Surah Al-Jinn is Salasila, right? Salasila and Waqi'ah, I believe. So those are the 5 places. This stop sign is, first of all, is not really important. And second of all, it's only found in this qira'ah, Hafs and Asim. And in this qira'ah, Hafs and Asim, there is other chains of narrations that the Saktah is not found. So if you find somebody, like myself, reciting with the riwayat Hafs, but I recite from a narration that doesn't have a Saktah, so don't be surprised that I don't make Saktah in this, even though I'm reciting with Hafs, but I'm not making Saktah because I'm reciting from that chain of narration that doesn't have them. So it's only found in this qira'ah, this riwayah, and in some awjuh of the riwayah. Right? So it's not very, very popular. And it's not a really important stop sign anyway. The next stop sign is the ayah sign. The ayah sign, they put it like a design, fancy design, and usually it has a number of the ayah inside of it. And the ayah sign, the reason it is considered a stop sign is that it is from the sunnah to stop at the end of the ayah. And whenever a person stops at the end of the ayah, it is considered a complete meaning, complete sentence. Right? Complete meaning or a complete sentence. There may be like very, very few exceptions where stopping at the end of the ayah doesn't complete the meaning. And probably the best example of that is فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, very famous. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ is like a giving warning, stern warning for those who pray, right? Which doesn't make sense, right? And then it carries on in the next ayat saying الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. And then the meaning is complete. So if a person is reciting this, and you will find that some people, when they recite this, they don't stop at the ayah. Right? If a person doesn't stop at the ayah, it's not a big deal. Right? Especially if he believes that he has to complete the meaning. That's fine. But on the other hand, if a person stops at the ayah, we say it is a sunnah to stop at the end of the ayah, except that he shouldn't say فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ and then go Allahu Akbar. Right? Because then they have a problem. And this famous poet, he used to say لم يقل ربك ويل لكل سكر ولكن قال ويل للمصلين. And he was trying to basically use a proof because he used to drink alcohol. He said Allah, he didn't say waylun for those who drink, but he said waylun to those who pray. Right? He used it to his advantage. Abu Nawas, that's the name of the poem. So stopping at the end of the ayah is usually considered waqfun tam, I believe this is how they call it, because it has completed the meaning of the sentence. And the most perfect stop, and the stop that there is no debate about it, is the stop at the end of the surah. Any surah. If a person stops at the end of the surah, this is the best stop. Nobody can debate you whether the meaning was complete or not. For sure the meaning was complete. That's it, it's done. So this is the best stop. Other than these stops, something that I often mention that you don't usually find in the books of Tajweed is within the ayah itself, right? Probably the biggest issue is within the ayah and the meaning of the ayah itself, where you find people saying, I was reminded of this yesterday, Jannatin tajri. Jannatin tajri, and that stops here. Right? Gardens, running. Right? This is what the meaning. Running gardens, even though like one of the mashayikh says, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of doing this. He can have like running gardens, but the meaning intended in this these kind of ayat is not the jannat that are running, but it's the water that is beneath them. Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. Right? What is running here is not the jannat, is not the gardens, but it's the water that's beneath them. So this is, they say, you shouldn't stop at this word. This is just a good example of stopping at the wrong word. Or the example that we gave earlier of this man who was speaking in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Or the saying of the disbelievers. The saying of the disbelievers. Whenever, this is the advice that I give, usually in these kind of situations. Whether you understand Arabic or not, this is like a good advice to everyone. Whenever whenever you are reciting and you find the word qala or qalu, which means he said, or they said, or any similar word, then if you stop in the middle of this saying, it's like you're quoting someone or some people, then you have to go back to the word qala or qalu. It is the safest. Even if it is the believers that are saying it, it is safer to go back to their saying than to start from the statement itself. Right? Because in some cases, the statement itself is very ugly. Right? So instead of a person saying, they said this or that, he's saying the statement itself about usually, something bad about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or about the believers. Right? Let's say the hypocrites are saying something bad about the believers. There are many ayat like this in the Quran. So whenever you stop after the word qala or qalu or similar word, if you stop in the middle, then try to go back. In some cases, it is not possible for most people to do that, because the sentence or the statement is so long that it's not usually possible for the average person to go back to the statement, such as the statement found in, I always have trouble remembering the surah of this statement. وإذ قالوا اللهم إن كان هذا هو الحق من عندك فأنزل علينا حجارة من السماء أو ائتنا بعذاب أليم. And this is a statement that's extremely long, and you will find that you can verify it. You can go back to the recording of Sheikh Al-Husari and Abdul Basit Manshawi and see how did they read this, and if they stopped, where did they stop? It's a very long statement where the disbelievers are saying وَإِذْ قَالُوا اللَّهُمَّ, and they said the same thing as we say when we make dua. اللهم إن كان هذا هو الحق من عندك. If this is really the truth from you, O Allah, then usually the normal person or a person who wants guidance, they would say, you know, guide us to the straight path, or show us a sign, or show us the straight path, right? Or help us find the right path. And usually even the disbelievers, if they make a dua for guidance, I have no doubt in my mind, and I read a lot of stories of people making this dua while being disbelievers, and they were guided because of it. They were guided. But in this case, these people, they say, and this is the logic of some people, he said, if this is the truth, then أمطر علينا حجارة من السماء, then shower us with stones from the sky. They are asking for punishment. Nobody should ask for punishment, whether a believer or a disbeliever. Don't ask for punishment. The best dua, instead of asking for punishment, is Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-'afwa wal-'afiyah fi dunya wal-akhirah. If a person is able to escape punishment in this life and the hereafter, may as well just ask for this. You know, this is the best, instead of asking for punishment. So, in an ayah like this, which is a single ayah, it's very long. Even if you take a deep breath, you will have a lot of trouble. Most people, I'm saying, will have a lot of trouble finishing the sentence. So, if we go back to the recording and see a reliable source, if they stopped, where did they stop in this ayah? If they stopped somewhere, then may as well imitate what they did. And you will find many recordings of even very popular reciters, they make mistakes like this. Like they would stop and they would make like bad stops, basically. Any questions? Questions? I feel like I'm missing something, but we can't stop. No questions. Yeah, I remember now. There was I had a student who gave me a trick on how he basically, whenever he stops, what does he do? And I found it very interesting, and it made sense to me. So I'm always trying to share this information. And he was not he was a non-Arabic speaker. So he said, whenever I stop in the middle of an ayah, right? Because when you start an ayah, we're talking about a long ayah, you're eventually going to run out of breath before you finish the ayah, right? For most people. So you're going to be stopping somewhere. So the first advice that I give to people is, make sure you don't stop in the middle of a word. Don't stop in the middle of a word, right? At least try to finish that word, or stop before it. Now that you stopped, you need to basically go back so that the sentence makes sense, right? You need to know where to go back, where to start from now. Okay, you stopped because you run out of breath, but now where to pick up from? So this brother was saying, if you go back, if you see a wow, go back to that wow, and you're going to be fine. Yeah. Right. We're talking about a wow. We are not talking about a wow that is found within a word, right? We're talking about a wow which is harf al-'atf, which means and, right? Usually it means and. So if you go to a wow, then most likely it's going to be like a complete sentence, or the meaning will make sense. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So especially if you don't understand Arabic, or if you are not sure about the meaning, you are not sure, you know, where does the meaning start or where does it finish. So I think it's a very interesting point. If you are reciting to a shaykh, let's say you are trying to get an ijazah from a shaykh, or you are just reciting to be corrected, he may want you to stop in very specific stops, and stops that may differ from the mushaf that you are reading from. And I remember this in the second page of Surah Al-Baqarah, when you turn to the second page. Of course, in the first page, the ayah that we're going to recite today, ayah number 1 to 5, at the end of ayah number 5, it's talking about the believers. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Right? And then ayah number 6, what does it say? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Right? So here the meaning is clear that it's talking now about something else, completely different. First 5 ayahs is talking about the believers, and then now it's shifting. So if you stop at ayah number 5, you are safe. The meaning has completed. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. And then it says خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. Allah has sealed their hearts. وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ. That means He has also sealed their hearing. If we say here وَعَلَى أَبْصَارِهِمْ, then we may think that He has also sealed their sight. Right? So when I was reciting to the Shaykh, he said, no, he stop at على سمعين. You have to stop here. And then say وَعَلَى أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. Right? Because this is talking about a different aspect. It's not talking about putting a seal on their sight, but it's talking about putting like some kind of veil in front of their sight. Right? So it's different. That's why stopping is important, because it corrects the meaning, or it takes care of the meaning, and it also make it clear to the person who is listening, make it like obvious to the listener what the meaning is. Any questions? All right. Okay, we can start reading now, and stop whenever there is a question or a comment or a correction. Last week we started from the top of the list. Okay, let's start from the bottom of the list this time.
I think you started from the bottom.
We started from the bottom last night.
Last
No, but the sajjad is on top because the list is not alphabetical
Oh,
yet.
it's not.
Yeah. This is like a registration order. So the first one is going to be Brother Musa. First of all, who read this ayat at home? Who listened to the ayat? We had about 6-7 people. So that, yeah. Go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
How many people recite other than Hafs here? Other than Hafs? Qalun one. Qalun, right? Qalun.
Yeah.
also brother Slim. Brother Slim is also Qadr. 4 people, 5 people. All right, Jazakallah khair. Brother Nasser is not here. Brother Fawad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك عليهم هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
I guess it's the first time I hear you read.
Yeah.
It reminded me of something that I wanted to do. I never asked how many people here never took Tajweed before. Never took Tajweed before. Including the silent one. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. I wanted to make a video. We never did this before, but I thought it would be interesting to take a video of before and after. Right? For the people who never took Tajweed before, if some of you want to volunteer, we take a video now. You recite something from the Mus'haf, and then we'll take it after we finish the course, 8 months down the road, and you see the difference. It's going to be like a big difference. Of course, the difference depends on how much effort the person put. But in some cases, I remember there was a friend of mine who took Tajweed with me, and he started from scratch. He didn't know anything about Tajweed. At the end of the 8 months, people heard him and said, "Whoa!" He was reciting like a husari. Yeah. He made a lot of efforts, and I was personally impressed. I'm rarely impressed. But I have to say this because I'm very picky. But it would be interesting. So maybe Brother Mustafa can help with this taken video. We could do it here after the class. If whoever wants to volunteer, we'll do like before and after. And it's a time to do it now before we continue. The other thing before I forget, the campus will be closed from December 25th to January 1st. I found it on the website, Brother Faris.
So the after the break, the first date will be the 7th.
The 7th. What about the 24th? The 24th is not officially...
Next week is booked.
So we can have the class next week? I mean, 2 weeks from now. The 24th, 2 weeks from now. Next week is 17th.
Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Yeah. 24th because it's like a...
The 24th of the week will be closed.
Is it?
Won't be. Just because the last date that they're open is somewhere around the 20th. The exams finished on the 19th.
Officially on the website it says from the 25th to the 1st.
Yeah,
but I guess
they stopped bookings around before that.
All right, so the 24th we just I guess cancel it.
Yeah. So next week is the last one, and then.
All right. So next week is going to be the last class for this year, and we start again January 7th. January 7th, Wednesday, January 7th is the next class. So we're going to miss the 24th and the 31st. So we're going to miss 24th and 31st, like 2 weeks. I mean, 2 lessons. All right. So whoever wants to volunteer for the video after the class, inshallah, you're welcome. It's just going to be like a 1-page reading from the Mus'haf. Or next week. Okay. Brother Sharif.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
Brother Fawad, I forgot to mention this. The second ayah, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. You didn't make any stops. Was it intentional or just?
No.
It wasn't intentional. So you had enough breath to just. Okay. And you notice in the second ayah we have the 3 dots, right? So the first one was after the word la rayb. The second one was. Do you have the 3 dots in this in the Muslim?
Yes.
All right. Everyone has 3 dots in their Muslim? Yeah. So for practicing, when we are practicing, let's try to apply this. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you don't stop; it's fine. But let's try to practice this. So you either stop in the first one or the second one. And Brother Sharif, Alif Lam Mim, make it a little bit longer, and then longer between the Lam and the Mim. Alif Lam Mim. Right? The connection between the Lam and the Mim has to be longer.
I volunteer. I will volunteer.
All right. Take note.
Yeah, I have a question about that. Freedom. Can I ask now or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one time I heard somebody reciting it in a very interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
The way he said it is, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ وَفِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. He went back one word, and so he got both meanings, basically. Do you think this is valid, or have you ever heard this before?
I may have heard it. The brother is saying, I don't know, did you hear what the brother Bassam said? Yeah. Sometimes you hear people or reciters stopping in a way that we are not used to. Right? He said he stopped after the word fi, and then he went back to the word fi. Right? And of course, the meaning is, we can understand the meaning. Like, we can understand that it gives like extra emphasis to the meaning. In this particular case, I personally don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, something I mentioned, by the way, last week about the takbir, that it seems about the takbir, Brother Sharif, if you remember, I think you asked me about the takbir. It seems like there's a huge debate about it, that I may not have been aware of it, or maybe I forgot about it. I said it was a sunnah, but actually the hadith that they refer to is a hadith da'if, is a weak hadith. Even though some of the Quran may still use the takbir, and they differ even in the way the takbir is done. Some of them says just say Allahu Akbar, and I was listening to Abdul Basel, because I remember he used to say it, and I was trying to refresh my memory how did he used to say it. He used to say a long one that at the end of the surah he would say La ilaha illallah Allahu Akbar wa lillahi hamd. I'm not sure what is his reference in this, and also they differed in where does it start. Does it start from Surah Al-Duha, or a little bit before, or a little bit after? In any case, I mean, it's not, for us, it's not a big deal. If you don't do it, then it's probably better, because it's not like an established sunnah, and you will find that it is also different from one qira'ah to another, or from one wajh to another. In the which I recite with, they say that there is no takbir anyways, so I don't have a problem with that one. And I never practice it myself, so we can safely avoid it. Even the mashayikh, the more recent scholars, they were against it because they go by the hadith, and the hadith happen to be weak. By the Qur'an may have a different opinion. I'm not sure what the opinion of all the Qur'an is, but if we avoid it, then it's probably safer. Did I answer your question? I did. All right. In some cases, it may give like a different and also a different meaning, and also a nice meaning, such as in Surah Yusuf. I may have mentioned this before, where when the brothers of Yusuf came to him and they said, he told them, لا تثريب عليكم. Right? And the stop is usually after the word يوم. لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. Right? And this is how I memorize it, is the stop is after the word يوم. So لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. So when I heard it with the different stop sign, like it kind of, I was surprised. I heard it like لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم. It gives a little bit different meaning. It's the same overall meaning, but the added meaning is nice, right? Today Allah will forgive your sins. And the first one, it says لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. You don't have to worry about it today. So rough translation. All right. جزاك الله خير brother محمود.
ألف لام ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
Jazakallah khair. As you have noticed, Brother Mahmoud stopped at the first one and he stopped at the second one. And it also reminds me that I saw him turning the page after ayah number 4.
No, it's English translation.
No, that's fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that when everyone doesn't turn the page and only one person turns the page, you can hear that he turned the page. His mushaf is different, right? So in some masahif, you will find, in very few masahif actually, you will find that in some cases, in some pages, you will find one ayah starts in one page and it continues on to the next page. And this in Mus'haf al-Madinah is impossible to find. Like there's no ayah that starts in one page and finishes in the next. Because what happens, and we have seen it now, I mean, now meaning that even though you finish the ayah and then you turn the page, which is fine, but in case you had to turn the page in the middle of the ayah, then you'll have to wait a long time before you continue the meaning, right? So especially when you're dealing with an actual mushaf, it takes time to turn the page. So if a portion of an ayah is in one page, and then the next portion is in the next page, then it takes a long time, right? It's a long talk. Brother Hanif.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
One of the stops that are allowed is if the teacher stops a person, even though the meaning is not complete. Right? So these are the stops that are okay. And also another thing that I remember now is that when you're listening to a recording, such as the one I referred you to, you will find that they would stop at the end of the ayat. Right? So if you are, let's say, reciting by yourself, and you don't feel like stopping at the end of the ayat, especially when the ayat is short, you have no reference on how to connect the two, unless you are knowledgeable in Tajweed. Right? You don't have like a recording that you can refer to. How do you connect it to ayat? In your case, like if you don't stop. If you have a sheikh, if you have access to a sheikh, then you can ask, how do you connect these two? Right, from one ayat to another. And most of the time you will find that when you hear people recite or praying behind somebody who connects one ayat to another, you will find that they make a lot of mistakes because they didn't learn it that way. They learned that they have to stop. So now they are connecting, they don't know how to do it. Right? Or if they stop in the middle of the ayah, that they are not used to stopping there, they just don't know how to do it. So they get stuck. All right, Brother Sam? Sorry, Brother Bassam. It sounds similar.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
What did he do? What did he do?
You don't have to go back and make the ayah in this case.
أولئك على هدى من ربهم, for example.
لا هو قال الذين آمنوا بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة في stop here and start ومما رزقناهم ينفقون without going back for example. The same thing الذين آمنوا بما أنزل إليك وأنزل من قبلك you stop وبالآخرة هم يوقنون.
That's what you did?
Yes.
In this particular case, I don't see, or I don't think there is like a obviously wrong meaning if you do that. But even though in this particular mushaf there is no stop sign,
the meaning is complete because right? Yeah. So you don't have to go back and connect the ayah.
But even though it's not like a standalone sentence. If you say وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ, you cannot say it otherwise by itself, right? So it is somehow connected, but it doesn't give like a wrong meaning if you start from it.
No, for the الذين يقيمون الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة. The meaning is fully completed here.
Yes.
Right, and then he starts from something else.
Yeah, if we look at the first part, the meaning is complete. Because it's talking about هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, right? And then it explains who are these people. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. And then وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. So in this particular case, I don't think there is a big problem in terms of meaning.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
He reminded me that something I didn't mention is that whenever we stop in the Arabic language, we stop on a sakin, right? We stop on a sakin. That means, in this case, I've heard a couple of people stopping on the word min qablika, whether they run out of breath or for whatever reason. Maybe they knew, but they just run out of breath. So, for example, if we stop on the word من قبلك, we say من قبلك. We turn the fatha into a sukun. The only time the situation is a little bit more difficult or more than turning a fatha into a sukun, turning the haraka into a sukun, is when we have ta, a round ta. So whenever we have a round ta, then this ta turns into, let's say, is like this. It turns into a ha with a sukun. And the example is, for example, al-qari'ah. For example, the word al-qari'ah, if you stop on it, so the word al-qari'atu, if we stop on it, the ta, the round ta, turns into a ha with sukun. So we say al-qari'ah. And the other case is when we have a double fatha, tanween fatha, hakiman, for example. If we have the word hakiman, it will turn into hakima. Only the double fatha that will turn into a single fatha, basically. And the ta, the round ta, will turn into a ha with a sukun. Everything else will turn into a sukun. Everything else will turn into a sukun. Whether it is a kasra, or a dhamma, or a fatha, or if it was already a sukun, or a double dhamma, tanween dhamma, or tanween kasra, double kasra. All of this will turn into a sukun, except the round ta will turn into a ha with a sukun, and the double fatha will turn into a single fatha. And you need to know this because you will definitely have to stop in the middle of an ayah, and you will need to know what to do then. It may not be by choice, because you're going to run out of breath and you will not need to know how to stop. So this is something probably related to the topic.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
I was just trying to write down people who never took Tajweed before. Brother, we have Brother Baghdad, right? Who else? Brother Sharif, I wrote you down. Brother Yusuf, you never took Tajweed before?
Halfway, I didn't finish it actually, here and back home. But
so you took a little bit?
Yes, I
took a little bit. What about the other one, Muhammad?
I didn't take it formally, but I did a bit.
A little bit, but not formally. All right. You never took that. Yeah. Who else will find? Never. Who else? Yes.
remember Ya Ramadan.
If you remember this, so you took the tweet before. If you remember Ya Ramadan, you took the tweet. Who else tried it right now? That's it? All right. Okay, one more talk about that. Go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون.
Who did you listen to today? You said you listened to recording?
Usually Yassin Jazairi and
Saad al-Ghamidi.
Ghamidi الأخ من الكويت
Shari. طيب, try to listen to these ones. Because even it is also related to the stops. So when you are listening to these references that I gave you, you have to pay attention to where they stopped, and if it is possible for you to stop where they stopped without dying, then you should do so, right? You don't want to run into trouble, but if you are able to, then stop where they stopped and go back where they went back to. Because, I mean, a lot of people may not know this. These people, they didn't stop because they run out of breath. They usually stop because of the meaning. And they start from a certain point because of the meaning. It's not because they run out of breath. Because some of them, they may read the whole page without stopping. I may be able to do that. All right. So next week is going to be the last lesson before we break. That's December 17th. And the homework, if you haven't read it yet, is Surah Al-Ghashiyah, ayah number 1 to ayah number 7. And this Surah Al-Ghashiyah, if you noticed, in level 1, we're going to be reciting it a lot because it is relevant to the lessons that we're going to speak about, the Nun Sakin and Tanween, these kind of things. So we're going to be referring to it quite a bit, and hopefully every time we go back to it, we improve. So Surah Al-Ghashiyah from 1 to 7, ayah number 1 to ayah number 7. And next week is going to be the introduction to Nun Sakin or Tanween. And we are not going to talk about the rules of Nun Sakin or Tanween. We're just going to concentrate on the understanding the relationship between the Nun Sakin and the Tanween, and what is a Nun Sakin and what is a Tanween. And unless we understand the relationship between these two, we may not be able to understand the rules that will build on top of this. So it is very critical to understand that. And we're still in the phase of warming up. So we are still being able to read without me stopping you every time. But we'll get to a point where I'm going to be asking you questions, and you're going to have to answer and tell me what is the rule, and how come you read it this way or that way. And it's going to become more and more tricky as we go. So this is just a warm-up. Hopefully you didn't find it too difficult. Any questions before we close for today?
So the scene again, it's a small stop.
The scene is, they call it the Saktah. Maybe I didn't explain it enough. It's called the Saktah, and the way it is practiced is by stopping the flow of air. Because as long as the air is flowing out, there will be sound coming out, right? As long as your mouth is open and air is flowing, there will be sound coming out. So the Saktah is basically to stop that sound. So you stop and you cut the breath. Stop the breath from exiting for half a second or a second.
Can you show us?
For example, كلا بران على قلوبهم, which is found in Surah القيامة, right? المطففين كلا بران. So there is a Saktah after the bal, right? So we say كلا بل ران على قلوبهم كلا بل ران على قلوبهم. Is it clear? Surah Al-Kahf, because it is at the end of the ayah, unless you intend to basically read these two ayahs, which are fairly long. Alhamdulillah, الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. This is already a long ayah, so the second ayah is also long. So unless you're planning to read both of them with one breath, then you don't have to worry about the Saktah in this particular spot. But the other one there is a short ayah with the Saktah in the middle, so most likely you're going to have to, practice it. Yes.
So let's say you want to continue in Surah Al-Kahf. Do you also make the hukum of the changing of the tanween of the fath as mad?
Because you are stopping iwaja, so you have to basically turn it into one fatha, because it is considered a stop. And you will find, as I mentioned before, a lot of people making this mistake. Not necessarily this particular ayah, but when they are connected to ayat, because they are not used to connecting them, so they will not know what to do. Yes. Any other